reading by Swami Kriyananda will be reading on security. Man struggles all his life to store up treasures for himself, to ensure his property against loss and his health against the devastations of disease. He rests his faith in outward measures and sees not that such faith is like asking a wave not to move. Security is his alone, whose faith rests in the Lord. Most practical of men is he who offers his life to God, praying, "My safety is thy responsibility, Lord." This does not mean we should not be conscientious, but after doing our very best, we should leave the worrying to God. And let's affirm together, I live in the fortress of God's inner presence.
I live in the fortress of God's inner presence.
Nothing and no one can break through these walls and harm me. I live in the fortress of God's inner presence. Nothing and no one can break through these walls and harm me. And a little quieter, I live in the fortress of God's inner presence. Nothing and no one can break through these walls and harm me. And whispering, I live in the fortress of God's inner presence. Nothing and no one can break through these walls and harm me. And silently, superconsciously, I live in the fortress of God's inner presence. Nothing and no one can break through these walls and harm me. And please pray silently with me. I accept whatever comes, Lord, as coming from thy hands. I know that it comes in blessing, for I am thine, as thou art ever mine. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Good morning. Welcome to our Sunday Satsang. This is a reading from the Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible by Swami Kriyananda. It's a wonderful little book. We have it in the boutique if you'd like to pick it up. The title of this chapter is The Law is Perfected in Love. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, we read, "The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ." Grace means the power to rise spiritually. Truth means the experience of divine realities, not the application in the outer world of that inner experience. Divine love is the soul's experience of oneness with God. Kindness is the human manifestation of that love. Grace is deeper than mere kindness. Wisdom is a divine experience. Justice to all is a human law, though divinely inspired. It follows as consequence of the experience of wisdom. Truth goes deeper than mere justice. While following the law, we should strive always to trace it back to its origins in the vision of God. Therefore, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, urges the devotee not to be satisfied with spiritual precepts alone, but to go beyond them to the direct inner experience of truth. In the 18th chapter of the scripture, he says, "Nay, but once more take my last word, my utmost meaning have. Precious thou art to me, right well beloved. Listen, I tell thee, for thy comfort this. Give me thy heart, adore me, serve me, cling in faith and love and reverence to me. So shalt thou come to me. I promise true, for thou art sweet to me. And let go those rights and writ duties. Fly to me alone. Make me thy single refuge. I will free thy soul from all its sins. Be of good cheer. Thus, through the Holy Scripture, has God spoken to mankind. And this is a reading from Whispers from Eternity, Poems and Prayers by Paramahansa Yogananda. This is entitled, I Vow Never Again to Turn My Gaze from Thee. I take this sacred vow, never will I lower my love's gaze below the eyebrow horizon of my constant thoughts of Thee. Never will I turn my uplifted inner sight away from Thee. Never will I let my mind dwell on anything that reminds me not of Thee. I will disdain the nightmare of ignorant behavior. I will court all dreams of noble achievement, those of love, kindness, and understanding, for they are Thy dreams. Though I dream many dreams, wakefully I will ever think of Thee. In the sacred fire of constant remembrance, kept ever alight on my soul's altar, I will ever behold Thy presence with the watchful eyes of devotional love. Thy grace has shown me that the dualities of health and sickness, life and death, joy and sorrow are but passing fantasies. I am finished with those eternally self-canceling delusions. I am persuaded at last that there is but one abiding reality, Thy eternal, ever-conscious, ever-new, ever-thrilling, infinite bliss. And so it's our duty as devotees and lovers of God and seekers of the light to keep that burning love inside of our hearts, that aspiration, that simplicity of knowing of what the goal is, the simplicity, the humility, the thought always that we are constantly in the presence of God, that He is in our heart, He is in truth, He is in bliss, He is in every moment of our lives, He is in our thoughts, He is in our daily activities, He is in our troubles, He is in our successes and our joys. There is nothing about us on every level, thought, body, mind, or soul, that is not of God. That's all there is. God is the one that has created this dream. We are the ones that are dreaming it at the moment, but it's God's dream. And so when we go back into the home of our own souls, when we withdraw our energy from this dream, when we can be detached, when we can meditate deeply and really start feeling what we talk about and read about and listen to in the scriptures, when we can really begin to feel that, this dream disappears. It is not real. That is not reality. The reality is within our own souls. And it takes a great amount of courage. It takes a great amount of strength. It takes a great amount of determination to be humble, to be simple, to be open-hearted and childlike in our attitude, in our life. Because the world is heavy. The world is reasonable. The world will tell you what you need. The world will give you what the rules are to feel security. The world will tell you. It knows. Society knows better than the heart. Society knows better. Your family knows better. The corporations knows better. Money knows better. Everybody knows better how you should live your life. But no, that's the dream. That's the reality that loses its presence in your life when you go inside and you feel bliss and you feel guided by your inner reality, by God within. that's nothing. You realize that's nothing. This is a role we're playing in this lifetime. Our soul has come into this life, into this body, into this set of karma, to learn lessons. And what is the lesson? What is the major lesson that we're all learning? To love God. And to realize that we are part of a much greater reality than this world could ever give us. And so these teachers, these great masters, have come back to show us the way, because we can't really do it on our own. We're too caught up in the world. Our karma has taken us away from our center. Our karma has pushed us out and pulled us out and done everything it can to make us think that that's the reality. And so lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, we get caught. Again and again and again. Same thing. And here we are again in another lifetime. But oh, what a blessing. We have God-realized masters guiding us. We have techniques that they have given us, imbued with spiritual power to help us to go inside. It's not a write-off anymore. This incarnation is the most valuable one that we have. Because this incarnation is the incarnation, the lifetime, the absolutely perfect moment that Divine Mother has set up for us, and we've agreed to find God. We can find God in this life. We don't need to put it off any longer, because there's no reason to. If we are open and childlike, and we receive what God has to give us to guide us back home, then we're done. We're basically done. When you're sitting at the Guru's feet, Yogananda said, one or two lifetimes more. That's all. So our job is to hold on to the Guru's feet through it all. Through all the criticism, all the judgment, all the failure, all the pain, all the sickness, all the duality. Our job is to sit at the Guru's feet and to ask him what to do. Isn't that easy? We make it so complicated. Should I do this? And how do I feel guidance in my heart? And I pray, and should I pray for this? And is this the right way to go? And should I marry this person? And, we're in our minds. We're in our minds, and we're always thinking. And we're always being driven by the ego, saying, well, try this, or maybe you should try that, or maybe it's in astrology, or maybe it's in this path or that. It's not. Ultimately, every single soul comes to the same conclusion. It's inside. It's inside. It's the Guru. The Guru will take you there. He said he would never give up his job about us until we're there. So he's given us the autobiography of a yogi, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swamiji Yukteswar. He's given us this path of Kriya Yoga so that we can achieve that ultimate goal very quickly, without having to waste any more time. We don't have to waste any more time. Yesterday we had a wonderful music retreat here at the center. And we had our Chennai Nayaswamis come up from Chennai Center. They're the leaders down there. And they gave just a wonderful retreat. And the main theme of that musical retreat was about vibration and how thoughts create this vibration, and how we can rise above thought through spiritual music, through chanting, through listening to spiritual music, and go inside and experience bliss. It was very, very well done, and we all chanted and we sang. By the end of the day, we were all in bliss. We were laughing, having the greatest time. Many people came in with worries and furrowed brows, and we were tired. But by the end of the day, we were all happy. What was that about? That's because we had tuned into a higher vibration, a higher consciousness, through singing. That's all we were doing. We were just singing. And our consciousness was lifted, and there was joy in our hearts, and we sang, and we were all happy by the end of the day. It was quite an amazing experience. We sang Yogananda's chants, Swami Kriyananda's music, but that wasn't the idea, was just to say this is the only music. It was a lesson in what we can do in our daily lives to uplift our consciousness so we don't get caught by this world. It's a spiritual tool. It's a spiritual tool to raise your vibration through music. Because that vibration will then draw and magnetically help you to receive spiritual vibrations in your heart. What you put out, you get back. If you're chanting, you will get spiritual vibrations back. It will change your consciousness. Instead of being in our minds all the time, we can be in our hearts. We can open our hearts to that grace. We can not even sing the music, but we can listen. We can listen. And that vibration that comes from the masters will change our consciousness. It was a very beautiful experience. You know, Master brought chanting to the West. It's always been here in India, but he brought it to the West, and he wrote just many, 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 many chants. He wrote them in English and also in Hindi and also in Bengali. But when he sang, if you've ever heard Master chanting, it's on the internet, and you can just put Yogananda chanting and pull it up. You felt such love. You feel that love. You feel God's love pouring through him and changing the vibration of his environment, of anybody who listens to that chant. And it does. It actually transforms you. And Master's chanting is so powerful. There was a time in New York where he sang at Carnegie Hall, and again, the world and all of his handlers said, well, this is what you should do and this is what you should talk about. But he said, I'm going to go chant at Carnegie Hall, which is the most renowned hall of music in America. I'm going to take my harmonium, I'm going to go chant. They say, oh my God, you can't do that. They're not going to understand that. These conservative Americans, they're used to, you know, Benny Goodman and that kind of music. They are not good. They're not going to listen. So he just ignored them, and he went, and he was up on stage, and he started singing, Oh God Beautiful, for an hour and a half. Can you imagine? Oh God Beautiful, oh God Beautiful, at thy feet I do bow. Oh God Beautiful, over and over and over and over. And the people, it was packed to capacity, were transformed with that music. Many of them went into ecstasy. Many of them, they said their lives were changed forever after that experience. And he was showing us through that medium of music how you can change your consciousness just by singing God's name, just by chanting spiritual music. It's a spiritual tool I think many of us forget about. Here at the center, we chant a lot, but when you go home, there's no support for that. Where are you going to do that? Well, now it's on the internet. Put your headphones in. Ananda Radio. We have tons of music that you can listen to. But that will transform your life. You know, it's the simplicity of the soul that will draw God. I've been reading lately the life of St. Francis of Assisi. Master said that was his patron saint, which is very sweet because St. Francis was a very simple, very powerful, loving saint. And he was from a very wealthy family, very wealthy in Assisi, the wealthiest family in the town. And his father was a merchant, and he was the man. St. Francis was young, rich, popular. So he would go through the streets at night with his friends, and they would sing songs, and they would drink, and they would get happy, and they called him the troubadour. They called him the troubadour, and he had his little gang of friends, and we would go all over Assisi at night. Well, then he got really sick, and he had a vision of Christ, and it completely changed his life, and he decided he wasn't going to be a wealthy merchant's son any longer, that he was going to be a troubadour for God. And so he left everything. He left his father's wealth. He gave his family, they wanted him to stay. He said no. He started begging food. He left the town. He went outside the town, and he started just being in nature, singing to God, songs that came from his heart. And in the very beginning, he was ridiculed and persecuted and laughed at and scorned, and people would beat him up in the streets and say, why don't you just go away? You're embarrassing your family. You're embarrassing everybody in this town. Go away, because he had been very wealthy. But his heart was so pure and so filled with love that one by one, these wealthy friends of his left their families and started joining him. One by one, they gave up everything, their education, everything, to be with St. Francis. And they started praying and meditating and singing to God. And they started preaching. And they had nothing. They would beg for their food, and they would sleep on the bare ground at night. Pretty soon there were 12 young men that came, and they became so magnetically strong in their love for God, and they started preaching all over Italy. St. Francis would send these boys out to preach the love of God, for the love of God. They had never done anything like that before. But they were filled with God. They were filled with joy. They had nothing, but they had everything. And so St. Francis he was so in tune with Christ, and Christ was telling him, I want you to fix my church. I want you to be the one to transform the church. St. Francis didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't understand God. And so slowly but surely, through several situations, he began to understand. The church at that time was during the 12th century, or 1200 actually, was totally corrupt. Kind of reminds you of the world now, just totally corrupt. The politicians, the churches, but the church especially was totally into materialism. And they had huge edifices and huge cathedrals and pompous cardinals, and they spent money like crazy, and they lived up really high off the hog, and these were the Christ's representatives, supposedly. And here comes this little man, St. Francis, and he went to the Pope with his little 12 band of people, of his little monks, and he said, all I want is a rule. This is my rule, and I want to live this way. This is what I want to do, but I don't want to leave the Catholic Church. I want to stay in the church, but I want to live this way with my monks. Oh no, the Pope said, this is not practical. Simply not practical. The bishops put up a big argument. Oh no, because how are you going to live? It's not responsible. It's embarrassing to the church to have you ragamuffins representing us. We don't want you. How can you do this? And St. Francis said, well, Christ said, give everything away and live my life, and that's the way we're going to do. The Pope would have nothing to do with it. So that night, after he had made his plea for a new rule, for a new order in the Catholic Church, the Pope had a dream. And the dream was that there was this big, beautiful church in Assisi, the square there. I guess it was in Rome. It was a big church, and it was tipping over to the side. And there was this little ragamuffin, brown-robed boy holding the church up like this, just holding it up like that. And the Pope realized that that was his church, and this was the man that had come to him the day before, and he was holding up the church with his love and his simplicity and his pure heart. And so he finally granted him his rule. And St. Francis's life was one of ill health, persecution, but his rule and his monks and those Franciscans in the early days grew one by one, and then tens, and then hundreds, and then thousands of young men came to St. Francis and wanted to live in this way, just completely in simplicity, not worrying about tomorrow, trusting in God, knowing that they would be taken care of if they only did God's will. It's such a beautiful story. The Franciscan monks are one of the purest orders in the Catholic Church, or were. But St. Francis had such a strength of character and such a love for God that he was able to magnetize a whole new faction of the church, which eventually did give people something else than the riches of the church and the corruption. So for us, we don't have to give up everything and walk out and beg our food and that, but we do. If we want to find God, we do have to give up the worry. We do have to give up our ideas about what we need. We do have to give up our egos. We do have to transcend what we think we need to make us happy. We have to be yogis. A yogi wants only union with God. That's all. Only union with God. And just as it said in the Bhagavad Gita reading this morning, give me your heart. That's all God asks. But how can you give your heart to God if you're so bound by what you need and think you need, and you're so worried about the future and so worried about if it's all going to work out, and you're so worried all the time? Master said, go on a worry fast. But you can't give God your heart because your heart is already given to the world. So we need to we have to have simplicity, and we have to have that idea of pure detachment from this world. The Bhagavad Gita over and over and over says that. Krishna said to Arjuna, even a flower given with devotion, even a flower will make me happy. That's all we need to do. We need to give devotion. We need to open our hearts. We need to listen to Divine Mother through spiritual music. We need to be generous in our spirits. We need to really change the way we live so we don't put on brown robes and walk around with the begging bowl. But in our hearts, we can wear brown robes. In our hearts, we can have begging bowls. In our hearts, we should be so generous, giving all the time. Why is that? Why do the great ones always say, give? Because when you give, you purify your heart, and then that pure spirit can come in. It's the flow of energy, is what it is. But when you're thinking about yourself and what you need and what the hurts you've suffered and how this world is coming down around you, it will hurt. We all have karma. We cannot avoid what's coming to us. We can only choose how we're going to respond. That's the only thing we can do, is to choose how we can respond to the karma. And if we respond with humility, and if we respond with love, and if we respond with open-heartedness, our lives will be transformed. You know, Master said something to Swami that I think about quite often. He said, I know every thought you think. That's kind of scary. Every thought? Do we want anybody to know every thought we think? I don't think so. At least in this age, we have the privacy of knowing our thoughts are our own, but the Master knows every thought you think. So given that, what a way to transform your life if you're always thinking of God. That's all we have to do. We might be drawn down by the world, but if you think of God first, and you're always chanting God's name, and you're always saying Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru, well then you become part of Master. You become part of that flow. And then you don't mind him knowing every single thought you think. But just imagine, one time one of his disciples, the first Kriya Yogi in Boston in America, his name was Dr. Lewis, and he was a dentist, a very formal Bostonian dentist, and this man was in his office, and he was just berating Master. He was going, this guy's a fraud, or whatever he said. He was telling Dr. Lewis, this guy that you're going to his classes now, you better be really careful about him. And just started really giving all this negativity to the doctor. All of a sudden there was a knock on the door, and there was Master. Master had known this was happening. He was way across town. He got on a bus or a train. He came as soon as he could over to Dr. Lewis's doctor's office, knocked on the door. This man, the bad man, had left, and he said to Dr. Lewis, Doctor, do you still love me? Isn't that sweet? Do you still love me? See, that's what we have to imagine and know about the Guru in our lives. He knows every thought we think. He knows every experience we're having. He knows all of it. And all he cares about and all he wants, do you still love me? So if we can love the Guru in that way, he will take us right to God. Right to God. An open heart filled with love. It's such a... And when you meditate on these teachings and you meditate on the Gurus and you practice Kriya Yoga, sometimes it just seems easy. You think, oh, thank God, we have a way. We have a path. We know where to go. We know what to do. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. The world is very complicated, and the world will pull on you. The world will pull on your karma, because we're here because we're not perfect. And it's subtle. It'll always promise roses, but it will give you the rattlesnake behind the rose. That's what Master said. It always promises this is going to be so, this job, it's going to be so good. You can make so much money. But you might have to compromise your values a little bit. You might have to, when the taxes season comes, you can just maybe say this and not pay that tax. And that's okay. That's subtle, but it's the world. Truth. You know what truth is. The Guru knows what truth is. Always stand in that truth. Always do Dharma. Really hard in this world because everything conspires against it. But the Guru only wants you to come home. Only wants you to come home. So even if there's a tug of war and it's a struggle, it's okay. Let go. Let go of the world. Stand in your truth. Stand in love. Stand with Divine Mother. Stand with Master. Stand with these Kriya Yogis. Stand with your Guru Bhais. Stand with light. This world, you look around, it's so dark now. Everywhere you look, the internet, and I can't even do the internet anymore. So I try to read saint stories. I try to read uplifting stories and books and the Gita and the autobiography of a yogi. It lifts my consciousness. But this world is really dragging us down. But those of us who have had the touch of light from Divine Mother have a responsibility, but also have the wonderful grace of knowing that we are protected always. Always stand in that light. Never for a moment think it's gone from you. All you have to do is open your heart. Om Guru, Om Guru, Om Guru. Don't give up. Don't let the world take you. That's why Yogananda wanted communities. That's why we have centers around India and around the whole world. We can come together and we can meditate together and help one another through the example of our lives. It's not that we have to say great things and everybody has to teach a class and go out. But the example of our lives are really what people watch. When people are watching spiritual people, they watch carefully. They want to see if it's true. And so stand tall. Be courageous in the light. Be who you want to be. Be who the Guru wants you to be. That changes people. All the amount of talking and preaching and nothing changes people. But how you live your life, that will change people. Your children, they need to see you as an example of a spiritual warrior. They do, because that's what they'll remember. And when we're dead and gone, what are they going to think of? Wow, my dad was so dharmic. My dad was so truthful. My dad meditated. My dad loved God. Don't you think that has an effect on a child? I mean, we have our opinions of our parents, and some of them are not so good or healthy or happy. But what a wonderful thing, just through the example of your life, the next generation coming up. Wow, this little group of people, Master's disciples, they were really honestly dharmic. And they really tried hard. And they really loved God. That's what I hope for all of us. To take it personally, individually make love to God. Individually. Because that power grows. And then you touch souls that way. One candle flame touching another candle, touching another candle. One soul loving God, touching another soul, loving God. That's how spiritual power works. And we can beat this world. We can stand in the light. And we will know beyond a shadow of a doubt, because of our joy and our bliss and what's inside of us and what comes out, that we have stood in truth. that we have lived our lives in a way that the Guru would be proud of. And then the Guru will say, at the end of our lives, do you still love me? And you can say, yes, I do. And now I want to come home. And then he'll bring us home, because that's his job. So God bless you all. And next Sunday, the center will be closed, because we're all going. There's 35 of us going to the Ramana Maharshi's ashram for a pilgrimage. And so the center will be closed next week. But we will pray for you all during our pilgrimage and send blessings. So thank you for coming today, and have a wonderful week ahead. Okay, God bless you.